Hello and welcome to a Thursday night football showdown breakdown. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by King Showdown Virgin himself, Cody Main, who has been deep in his basement crunching numbers on Lamar Jackson showdown slates. Cody, good evening.
First of all, you want to talk about virginity? Who's firing on multiple Salvan Ahmed props tonight? That's peak virginity there, buddy.
It's really out of control. And we have a bunch of props on tonight's game, 2 Salvan Ahmed props. And we'll get to the thesis behind the Ahmed props here in a second. One I think was just a bad line. The other one I think is a bit of a thesis that can be applicable to this showdown slate as well, which we'll talk about. But the story of this slate, I think, is how you view macro Lamar Jackson showdown slates in general, because we've seen a lot of these Lamar Jackson showdown slates over the last couple of years. And because he's such a unique fantasy player, because he accounts for so much of what the Ravens do on offense, rushing and receiving, it's kind of hard to get your head around it. So I'm curious, just before we get into all the micro stuff, how do you view Lamar Jackson macro showdown slates in general?
Yeah, these slates are incredibly fun because I wouldn't fault anyone if they just were running an MME set and locked Lamar Jackson at captain 100% of the time, because he is such a unique fantasy asset. But he is going to push for, as we'll get to, probably 35, maybe 40, probably closer to 40% captain ownership. And when you have one player soaking up that much ownership at the captain spot, it just creates these situations where players, really good fantasy assets, are extremely low owned, and you get really good leverage on those guys. So tonight, I'm kind of leaning towards the latter route, where I'll be underweight on Lamar Jackson in captain and probably match the field. He's going to be 90 to 95% owned in flex, probably get pretty close to that. But some of these skill position players that we'll get to, I think, project really well tonight at sub 5% captain ownership.
Well, and one thing I would also say about Lamar, one, you see his tails here are just absolutely ridiculous on this point distribution that Cody's put together. But second, they've changed the way they've played. So whereas in the past, I think you could say that it was unlikely that the Ravens could score 30 and 35. And also it would be less likely that they'd have a pass catcher go off. Now, if they score 30 or 35, I think one of Bateman or Marquise or Andrews is going off because of the way they're playing at a more pass rate over expectation. They're letting Lamar throw more. They're running the ball less, if you follow what I'm saying. So, you can get more captain pass catches for the Ravens than you can previously. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, and credit to DraftKings. I'm seeing someone posting in the comments that Lamar hasn't been the optimal captain since 2019. I just off memory, I think that's probably correct as far as primetime slates go. And the reason for that is because he's priced up so much. Even when he scores 30, as long as one of his teammates scores close enough to him, Andrews or Marquise Brown in slates past, and we've got a few guys tonight that I think can do it as well on the lower end. But if they get close enough, hit that super high price tag is going to leave him off optimal lineups as a captain if his pass catchers get close.
First of all, before we get into it here, Chris says, shout out to us. Hines and Pascal were both solid. Shout out to me specifically. Come on. Nyheim Hines, captain, baby. And we had the Nyheim Hines overs props. Come on. It's too good. Okay. Let's start with the Dolphins quarterback situation before we get back to Lamar here in a second, because, I think my original take was that Jacoby is worse than Tua, but not that much worse than Tua. I don't know. Maybe that's a really bad take, because Jacoby's ceiling just isn't the same as what Tua's is. I'd also say that when you're playing without Devontae Parker, you're playing without Will Fuller, it's harder to find a ceiling. So what do you think about Brissett at captain tonight and also in flex?
He's only going to be 5%-ish owned at captain, but I still think I'm going to be under that. I think there's some skill position players, and then obviously we're going to be on Lamar at least somewhat, even if we come in underweight. I don't feel the need to go to Jacoby Brissett captains tonight. They are throwing a lot, but these low ADOT, like you mentioned, low ceiling games from Jacoby. I think if somebody gets there for Miami, it's going to be one of those pass catchers, likely just catching up a bunch of short area throws, maybe falling into the end zone, but mostly racking up PPR points on PPR friendly sites like DraftKings. So I have really no desire to go captain Jacoby tonight in any sort of tournament.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I agree. And I think that makes sense. Jacoby's not going to give you much of a rushing ceiling either. And like when you have Will Fuller and Devontae Parker out there, at least they can like take a 10-yard slant and do something big with it. It's far more unlikely when it's like Mac Hollins and whoever else they have out there behind Jasicki and Jalen Waddle. Just to retouch on Lamar for a second here. So, we have projected 42.5% captain, 90% total. It'd be hard for me to make a lineup without Lamar in flex at least. What about some combos with Lamar you think make sense or don't make sense as we get to some of the skill players?
Yeah, I think if you are running Lamar as a captain, I think most often it's right to pair him with two pass catchers. I'm not setting any sort of steadfast rules to make sure that happens tonight because I think that I'll be unique enough in other ways when I've just got him paired with one guy. But we see the field doing it very infrequently to the point where it actually kind of becomes unique to pair Lamar with two pass catchers. And as you mentioned, they're finally above expectations in terms of pass rate. They're finally getting healthy in their pass catcher, so I think Lamar's going to find some success. And this Dolphins defense is just inviting the pass, and they haven't been able to defend it at this point. So I like pairing Lamar captain teams with two Ravens pass catchers most often. And as you can see there, the field's doing it at just about a 16% clip. Most people choose to pair him with one pass catcher. So I think you start to get a little bit unique there. You'll still have to find other ways to be different, but it's a start.
Yeah. And as we get to the roster construction stuff, I agree that it's going to be a lot of 3-3s because in lineups where you play Lamar, you're going to need some cheap Dolphins stuff. But just quickly, what do you think about constructions tonight? And again, if you guys are just tuning in, have been following, this is there's 6 spots on DraftKings. Obviously, the first number refers to the favorite. The second number refers to the underdog, how many players on your roster. But yeah, go ahead on this tonight.
Yeah, it's really pretty high on the underdog side, right? We usually don't see 29, 28% 2-4 lineups. Usually that's kind of a bread and butter for us. We know that underdog heavy teams are winning at an above average rate in terms of how often they're utilized, but it's really, really tough based off of salary constraints and based off of, just raw point per dollar projections. It's really tough to get in these favorite heavy builds. So you're going to see a lot of Lamar +1, Raven, and then bringing it back with a couple of the cheaper Dolphins guys. So with that said, these teams are going to be tough to make, but I do like trying to force in some 5-1 teams. Maybe with 5 Ravens, you're going to have to get cheap with one of the guys, probably some punt that doesn't project for very many points, but then bringing it back with like a Gesicki or a Waddle or even Myles Gaskin, and then just hoping that the Ravens just kind of blow the doors off this Dolphins team.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well. If you can make the 5-1 work on the Ravens side, let's get to the running back position here. And it's kind of messy on both. And I know a lot of people are excited about Myles Gaskin. So we think, and we have Ahmed over 12.5 rushing yards tonight. My thought was, first of all, it projected as an over anyways. Myles Gaskin touched the ball 26 times 4 days ago on Sunday. 26 times Myles Gaskin touched the ball. To ask Myles Gaskin to turn around and be the horse again and touch the ball 20 times again, I don't know if his body is up for that. Like, I obviously don't know, but I think there's way more paths to downside on Myles Gaskin than there are to upside, particularly at this 9,400 price tag. It would not shock me at all to see Ahmed mix in a lot more on base tonight and give Myles Gaskin's body a bit of a break and then use Laird a little bit more in the pass game. So, these, I mean, if you're trying to save money, Ahmed for 800, I think seems fine to me. What do you think about the Dolphins running back situation tonight? Obviously, Gaskin is very expensive.
Yeah, to your point on Ahmed, he's honestly probably the best cash play on the board outside of Lamar. Just the $800 price tag. We know he's going to touch the ball some. There's a reasonable floor there, even if you think we might be a little bit high on his overall rush share in this backfield. But he is going to be involved. He's going to touch the ball. He's $800, and he lets you kind of fit in what you need to fit in, especially to get Lamar at captain and get some of these higher end skill position players. But on Gaskin, he has been kind of a workhorse up to this point, and the ownership's going to be okay. It's going to be, especially a captain, you're talking 8% ownership. I think that's something that I'll be right around the field as I'm prioritizing Ravens skill position players, but handling about 75% of the team's carries without Malcolm Brown, and then really involved in the red zone near the goal line and as a pass catcher. So I think while there are paths to downside, given the, how many times he touched the ball last week, I think there are still equally as many paths to upside too.
Sure. Yeah. I'll probably have a fade on Myles Gaskin for this slate tonight. But yeah, if you think he touches the ball 26 times again, obviously he's a great play. I do not think he will. Though on the other side, though, I mean, they've kind of let Devontae Freeman separate a little bit, but I find it very hard to believe he's fully separated and they really want to feature him. We have a bet on Devontae Freeman under 40, I think it's 46 and a half rushing yards. Lev's going to play. Lev Bell's going to play. Tyson's going to play a little bit. He should play more. He might probably get a little bit. I think we have him for like 2 carries or something like that. What do you think about Ravens running backs in Showdown tonight?
Yeah, not really too interesting here. They're, Devontae and Lev Bell are splitting kind of 50-40, if you will, and then Tyson's getting the rest. But I think one interesting route, if you're looking to get really weird in, large field tournaments, maybe just a sprinkle of this. If you run both Freeman and Bell and just assume that all touchdown production flows through those guys and leave Lamar off that team will be unique. For sure will be unique. And the price tags are reasonable enough that you can kind of run it back with the expensive guys in Miami and just hope that the Ravens don't lean pass heavy and that they just kind of grind the ball with Devonta and Bell on a short week and that they just both get into the end zone. I don't know if I'll be doing it yet, but these super top heavy tournaments with hundreds of thousands of entries, this is kind of the way to kind of the things you have to think through to get unique in terms of a macro roster construction.
Honestly, like now that you say it, there was a slate. I think I played Lamar in cash like 2 or 3 weeks ago on a main slate, and the running back scored 4 touchdowns. And Lamar scored 0. So that was a major outlier, and I was tilting my fucking face off. But it happened. So we'll see. Somebody's talking about Patrick Ricard in chat here. I don't think I'd ever say this before, but he says Patrick Ricard is way underpriced.
Was he 1,000? I mean, these are the things that you have to consider in Showdown. And when he scores the touchdown and you've got the $200 Patrick Laird or whatever, then you are tilting your face off.
Yeah, they ran that play for Ricard. I think it was last week where I think it was a 4th down play or something where they kind of let him leak out the back, like fake like he's going to block and then leak out the backfield for a pass. But yeah, I mean, that's on tape now, so I'm not going to have Ricard. Okay. Wide receiver. So this is where it starts to get interesting, man. On the Baltimore side, I couldn't believe some of the props that were out there on Sammy Watkins. I mean, the market, or at least whoever set the lines on Sammy Watkins, was assuming that he was going to come back in and not only like be 100%, but also come back and steal from Rashad Bateman's role. And like, I just don't see it. I think Bateman's played well enough and is a better player at this point in their respective careers for Bateman to be the guy who's like not losing his job. And Watkins, as Evan put it in matchups, Watkins, whatever they give him is just like a bonus. So to me, I like nothing would surprise me on Watkins in terms of how limited he is. I could see him playing like 10 or 20 snaps in this game, keep letting Bateman out there for every single snap. Obviously the story though, on the Ravens side is this Marquise Brown run that he's on, A, and B, his salary. I mean, who found an $11K salary on Marquise Brown? And maybe it's right, because if he was any less, I'm sure that he would be massively, massively owned. But man, at $11K, he's really hard to fit with Lamar. Like if you play Lamar and Marquise together, like what else can you really do? So what do you think about Hollywood and any of the Ravens wide receivers' thoughts?
It gets really tough with Brown. If you put in Lamar at captain or even Marquise at captain and put the other guy in flex, you start to run out of salary really quick. And for that reason, I think that Marquise is going to be extremely low owned. I think I'm probably heavy on the 37%. I think you can funnel some of that to Bateman and some of these 7K guys. And then Lamar gets even a little bit higher up just to kind of show you how the sausage is made in terms of making the salaries work out. But I think we might even be heavy there just because that $11,000 price tag is super tough to fit on DraftKings. And it is a great spot. The median projection's pretty poor, but he's kind of been an alpha as of late in terms of target share and air yard share. And sure, some of that's probably going to come back to earth a little bit with Watkins back. But this Dolphins defense, the secondary has been atrocious. They're giving up 20+ yard completions at the league's highest rate, and they're getting passed on a lot. So I think that's like my one big stand right now is just being well overweight on that 5% Marquise Brown captain ownership.
Okay. On the other side, as I mentioned, Devontae Parker's out. Will Fuller is out. We know that Waddle has had this like voluminous yet low ADOT roll. Like, Jalen Waddle, 8 for 60 would not surprise me on Jalen Waddle whatsoever. Thought about making a bet on his under 60.5 yards and then not pulling the trigger because I could see him getting so many targets in this game. Can he break one? I don't know. I think he's okay. And then there's all these other guys that I'm sure are going to mix in because Preston Williams is 200. Mac Hollins is 4,200. The Preston Williams situation is kind of weird. I don't know if you have a read on that at all, but I could see him like making things work at 200. And any other thoughts on Waddle or any other Dolphins wide receivers?
Just starting with Waddle, it's kind of been crazy how that low 8, he hasn't really been generating deep targets at all. 76% of his routes are within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. So you're right, he is going to have to break one in order to kind of fit in the optimal, even if he's getting peppered late. I just think that, an 8 for 60, if he doesn't score and doesn't break one, it's not gonna do it for you. But the volume is there. He is getting targeted quite a bit. He's got double-digit targets in 4 of 9 games already. So I certainly like that. And then these other guys like Mac Hollins is a little overpriced. He's kind of one of those punty, going to be super low owned, might make it work, might land in the end zone. And then we just added Preston to projections. We don't even know if Preston's going to play. He's going to be active. And we know that it was disciplinary in week 8, but it was not disciplinary in week 9. Now with Parker and Will Fuller still out, I imagine he's going to have to play. If they don't play him, you get down into the Albert Wilson and Isaiah Fords of the world. And I just think Preston's probably a more talented player, but maybe the coaching staff just isn't in on that. So Waddle at the top end, I'm okay with, not crazy about. There's another Dolphins skill position player that I'm more interested in. And then some of these punt guys are the type of players that make it work if you want to run those Lamar heavy builds.
Yeah. To me, the preferred punt over Preston Williams is Ahmed. And like, it's not close.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of other people are thinking that as well. And yeah, Preston Williams has a lot of zeros in his range, man. Like even if he's active, even if he plays, he still has zeros in his range, like a lot of them. So I don't want to go overboard, but yeah, I mean, the difference in price between him and Mac Hollins is $4,000. I mean, it's crazy. It'd be hard for me to play Mac Hollins at 4,200, although that's the kind of stuff that Showdown slates are made of. Let's go to tight end because tight ends are actually very interesting on this slate. Shout out Penn State. Mike Gesicki has been having a very, very, very good year. His splits when Devontae Parker have been inactive are very, very strong. Mark Andrews has been kind of overshadowed a bit by Marquise Brown, but I think still playing really well, much better than last year and on pace to smash careers best across the board. And then there's these other Dolphins tight ends that do get into the mix. Smythe gets into the mix. Shaheen gets into the mix a little bit. So, I mean, all these guys at their prices, I think are going to be in play at least a little bit given Showdown dynamics. What do you think about the tight ends?
Now, starting on the Dolphins side, Gesicki's my favorite Dolphins skill position player. Big size. He's running out wide and in the slot for like 95% of his snaps. I think that if they get in the red zone and they're targeting players in the end zone, he's the type of guy that's gonna come down with one. As you mentioned, he's been a beast without Parker, so I think the target share is going to funnel there a little bit. And then the Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen, that's why there's not a whole lot of interest in the wide receivers, because these guys, the Dolphins are running 2 tight end sets at the league's highest rate. So these guys, they might seem like total dust balls, but they're going to play quite a bit. And it's going to be tilting because one of them is probably going to score a touchdown and you're not going to know which one it is because they all look the exact same on TV. So that'll be it's a fun, like 5-second sweat, trying to figure out which one caught the touchdown pass. But I will have a lot of Durham Smythe. I will have a lot of Adam Shaheen relative to where they are projected in terms of ownership, because it's just the kind of thing that's going to make it work. And they will be on the field running routes. On the Baltimore side, Andrews, I mean, the $8,800 price tag, you save over $2,000 coming down from Marquise Brown. He projects similarly. So I think he's probably going to be the highest owned non-Lamar player on the slate, maybe between him and Brissett. But there's really, really few holes to poke there. It just kind of depends on your appetite for total ownership in your lineup.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but the way to win in Showdown has been playing tight ends. And so it's a very exact science we have here. If you play tight ends, you win. And so, yeah, to me, like, I know there's a lot of Showdown dynamics going on, like just in a vacuum, that like Mark Andrews is so much of a better play than Marquise Brown. And that's what Cody is saying, because Marquise Brown is so expensive, it's like a pay up to be a contrarian spot. But, in a vacuum, if you weren't thinking about dynamics at all of Showdown, Mark Andrews to me at so much less is for sure a better play. All right. Kicker and defense. Are they in play in this slate? How are they in play in this slate? We see Justin Tucker here with the best projection among them at 4K. What do you think?
Yeah, there was a recent slate. I think it might have actually been the Bears-Steelers slate where we saw Boswell like 38% owned, which we just rarely see from kickers. Usually it's kind of in the teens or low 20s. But we see when the low-end skill position players are bad, and they kind of are in this case today, we're going to see a lot of ownership on the kickers. And Justin Tucker is one of the best. So they can certainly get in there, but just know that if you're playing that, you're eating a lot of ownership, and we might even be light on 30%. I think the Ravens defense is about properly owned, And then in terms of the Dolphins defense, just not a whole lot of interest there. They're going to have to generate a turnover and strip sack or something like that and return for a touchdown in order to break into optimals. And that's not something I'm willing to bet on with a mobile quarterback like Lamar, who is good at avoiding sacks.
All right. Little Tunchi's in the house. What's up, Little Tunchi? How are you, buddy? Thanks for tuning in. We have about 5 minutes here for questions before we get to the flag plant segment of the program. Dana asked, are there any stone cold minimums to consider this week? It's Ahmed, I think, is probably the best below 1,000. And then we mentioned Preston Williams. Is there anybody else below 1,000? Maybe some of the Dolphins tight ends too that we just mentioned.
Yeah, stone cold min, no, but yeah, you just mentioned Preston and obviously Ahmed, but guys like Josh Oliver, Adam Shaheen's 600, Tyson's 1,200, Dermot Smythe is 1,800. These are kind of the cheap range. We just don't have that one standout $200 play.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys can go ahead, keep firing in some questions. Here, if we get to him, would you play Gaskin over Bateman at the flex? I assume that is some type of season-long question, but yeah, I think if you're in season-long, you have Gaskin and Bateman. It would be Gaskin for me, although I do like Bateman. All right. Charlie notes that Mac Hollins is third on the team in ADOT behind Merritt and Fuller. Shout out Mac Hollins. Tua is out. We're aware. Thank you for the update there, Casey. Kittle or Andrews? Straight up, we're getting season-long questions here. You're talking.
That's my time to leave. That's my cue to leave.
You're talking to two guys who are the wrong guys to ask about season-long. But yeah, I mean, I'd try to play them both. Is probably my answer there if you can. Little Tunchi is a legend. Agreed. Joey, shout out to me. Naheem Hines flag plant. Fade Captain Lamar in single entry. God. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know what you think. Cody's such an animal. He probably thinks yes.
You just have to understand how often you're going to lose when you make that play. I think it's going to be 50, 55, 60% owned. But, as Dink talks about, as we all talk about, it's what you win when you're right, when you win. So, yes, for me, it is a fade Captain Lamar in single entry.
Yeah. KZ wants Little Tunchi to give us the lock, and Steel Curtain says Little Tunchi, who's the optimal MVP on FanDuel tonight. Charlie says, do you have any read on red zone carries, Bell versus Freeman? Freeman's been getting a lot of stuff, but yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's Freeman. He's been kind of the animal in the red zone, but could flip. Who knows?
Have my children seen the thumbnail photos? What do they think? They're humiliated. How could they be anything less than humiliated? Cody, have your children seen your YouTube thumbnail?
Yeah, so my son walked in because I was using his bedroom as a studio during nap time to take these photos, and he walked in on Dad taking these ridiculous looking photos. And then today, ironically enough, my wife has started memeing the YouTube thumbnail, so she's sending me texts making fun of me with my ridiculous looking faces. So it's going really well. Completely humiliated.
On FanDuel, is there any shot Lamar isn't the captain on FanDuel? So obviously on FanDuel, the dynamics are different. We don't really recommend playing Showdown on FanDuel. That way we think it's really hard to win on there. But is there any chance Lamar isn't? I think it's called MVP on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's like the stone lock over there. Just especially not only the fact that there isn't a 1.5x multiplier on the captain or MVP spot, just the way that the scoring dynamics work over there. If you want a pass catcher to beat him, you don't get the PPR or the bonus or anything like that. So yeah, you're chasing touchdowns. You probably want like a guy like Marquise Brown, hopefully catches a couple long ones, or Mark Andrews if you are going to go that route, but he is going to be significantly more owned over there in the captain spot.
Preston versus the cheap Miami tight ends. I don't feel great about Preston, man, given what's happened. I'll go with the cheap Miami tight ends, but that could look really dumb if Preston plays a lot. I just don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. As much as they're playing two tight end sets, I just prefer taking shots on those guys.
Joey and Matt are both asking for our favorite single entry captains. We'll get to that in the flag plants. I think is a better place for that. Who gets steamed in single entry? Probably, I don't know. I haven't run the optimals enough, but it strikes me that I could see Ahmed in single entry getting steamed a lot because he makes everything fit so much. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it'll be Lamar at captain, obviously, and then Ahmed in the flex, and then the 7 to 8K guys that project well from a point per dollar perspective will be significantly more owned, and the guys that project worse, like Marquise Brown, will be even less owned.
Can you play Gaskin and Ahmed together? Asked Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. $800 for Ahmed and Gaskin, still reasonably priced. 10-2 total price tag for the both of them. I think you could certainly do that.
Best prop bet tonight. If you want to get to the prop bets, you have to be in the Discord, in the subscriber only Discord. I don't know what lines are left, but a few hours ago, I thought the best stuff was the Sammy Watkins unders. We have Sammy Watkins under 37.5 receiving yards, and I thought Sammy Watkins under 2.5 catches was also good. Yeah, from Chris about the construction, we already talked about 5-1 and 1-5 for Millie type stuff. I think is good. Justin's looking forward to the Bateman breakout on Showdown. It's time. Shout out to corporate for the mandated humiliating thumbnails. All right. I think we've gone long enough here. Playing 2 Miami tight ends. Is that too thin from Nate? 2 Miami tight ends.
I think you probably want one of them to be Gesicki. I don't know that I'd be playing Shaheen and Smythe together in a lineup, though.
All right. All right. I will give you the honors here, Cody. The board is yours. Flag plant time for tonight's Lamar Jackson Showdown slate.
All right. I think I've alluded to it enough already, and he's the second most expensive player on the entire slate, so I'm not really going too far off the board, but 5% captain ownership for a guy over the last couple of weeks that has a 28% target share, 40% air yard share, facing a Dolphins defense that has just been obliterated by wide receivers, giving up big completion after big completion. Marquise Brown is the optimal captain tonight.
Okay. Oh, Daddy, Marquise Brown optimal captain it's hard to fit, man, because once you put Marquise Brown, like, what are you doing with the rest of the line? Because I assume you have Lamar in there, and then what?
Yeah, I'm going cheap on Dolphins is what I'm doing. It's probably going to be a lot of 3-3, but I'm going cheap and I'm getting off the board at Dolphins. As I mentioned, the tight ends are going to fit in there. Ahmed's going to fit in there.
Right.
I'm just going to have to find 1 or 2 differentiators.
All right. I'm staying on brand for my flag plant tonight. I'll say that a 5-1 Ravens is the optimal, but the one Dolphin in there, shout out Penn State. I mean, you don't go to Penn State and get a 99th percentile spark score, one of the best athletes in history to play the tight end position without Devontae Parker, without Will Fuller. You don't go to Penn State and then not be my flag plant in this spot. So Mike Gesicki, the optimal 1 in 5-1 lineups. And yeah, Mike Gesicki will be in the optimal for sure. I don't believe that Mike Gesicki won the motherfucking Mackey Award. I don't believe he did. I don't remember what year that was. That might have been like one of the Hawkinson years or something like that. I'm not remembering. But yeah. Okay. That is going to do it for this Showdown breakdown. Good luck to everyone. Go ahead and go out there and win something. I didn't demand corporate's going to be so mad. I did not demand likes before we gave our flag plans tonight, Cody. Corporate is going to be furious.
Awful.
So go ahead and give us the likes. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed so you know when we go live going forward. We can keep bringing you guys these free shows. For Cody, for Mike Gesicki, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.